This is episode 200 of the Bar Business Podcast. 200 episodes. When I started this show back in the early days a few years ago, I honestly didn't think that, many people would listen. But here we are, 200 episodes in, thousands of people listening from over 100 countries. And I wanted to take some time today to celebrate the journey of the podcast and talk about some of the insights we've discussed over the last 200 episodes. Hello, and welcome to the Bar Business Podcast, where we help bar owners increase profits, attract loyal guests, and simplify operations so you can avoid burnout and finally enjoy your life outside of your bar. I'm your host, Chris Schneider, the Bar Business Coach. The Bar Business Podcast is brought to you by QuickSpec. And full disclosure, I'm a co-founder. We built QuickSpec to give you back your time and help you work smarter, not harder. QuickSpec connects your POS data, layers in real-world context, and gives you actionable forecasts and KPI dashboards that allow you to make data-driven decisions so you can spend less time guessing and more time on what matters. Staff smarter, order better. Stop planning for rushes that never show up or getting caught off guard by the ones that do. When you make decisions based upon real data, not guesswork, you get your time back and your team runs smoothly. Check it out at quickspec.com. That's QUIXSPEC.com. And make sure to sign up for our early access program on the homepage. So, as I said, today on the Bar Business Podcast, things are going to be a little bit different. I'm Chris Schneider, and we're going to look back at what we've learned together, talk about some of the guests, their expertise, and the things that they taught us, highlight frameworks that have actually moved the needle for listeners, and talk a little bit about what's coming next. So we're going to celebrate a little bit. We're going to, as always, talk some data and some KPIs and throw some information out there for you. Really, today is about you, the listener. Those of you who are bar owners who listen to this show have been on this journey with me and kind of just talking about what we've done over the past few years. But I want to talk about how this happened, what happened here. So for me, I was in the industry. I was a bar owner, but I know as an owner myself and talking to other people, ownership is hard. And I looked around the internet. I saw, hey, there's a whole bunch of people talking about cocktails. There's a whole bunch of people talking about marketing, customer service, kind of the easy parts of the industry, the fun parts of the industry, the stuff that I actually don't think is boring. But what people weren't talking about was what is boring: profitability, finances, lean business management. And so I set out to really focus on those business systems and financial management that actually could help bar owners be more successful. And I will tell you, at first, it was a bit of a struggle. I had to find my voice as a consultant and coach. I had to figure out, what the heck are we even doing on this podcast? How should these episodes work? And I had to build an audience, which thank you guys all again so much for listening and supporting the show. But we had to build an audience in what is a crowded podcast space. But what I realized over time is that because no one was talking about these financial metrics, you guys actually wanted to listen to it. And while I put out some episodes that I thought were really, really boring about financial KPIs and how to measure things, I heard from you guys that I liked them. So I started to pivot more into let's deep dive into this data. Let's really talk about the nuts and bolts of finances. And it seems to be you guys like that. Now, if that's not true, please tell me, right? It could be completely accurate that I am misreading the room here. But from the data I can see, you guys seem to enjoy that. And so we went from talking about things like, hey, marketing is fun, to, 5-minute staffing math that reveals your hidden labor waste, or cash flow velocity, some of these really niche KPIs and metrics that can really tell you a lot about your business. Over the course of that, we also have had a lot of guests come in, and those guests have added significantly to both my knowledge and hopefully all of yours. Because one of the things I think we all have to remember in this industry, and it's something we've talked about with mindset a number of times, but no one person knows everything. No one person can think of everything. And so getting outside voices is the way to be successful. Now, beyond that, we all think a little bit differently. I have had some really, really, really good ideas over the years. Really good ideas. Only to tell them to other people and then for them to tell me, hey, I can see why you think that's a good idea, but that's freaking dumb. And so getting that outside feedback is essential. That's why I feel so blessed to have had so many of the guests we've had on. Now, over the course of this podcast, there are a few things that really haven't changed. And these are, kind of the three things that haven't changed and the three things that I'm going to make sure we always carry forward. Because to me, these are core functions of the podcast for you guys, the listeners, to make sure we get value out of it. We're always going to continue to talk about practical, actionable, data driven advice, right? We want good answers that make sense, that are things we can actually do based upon real data we understand. So that I will commit to you right now, that is not going away. Every episode, especially going into 2026, one of our goals is to have an answer. What can you do this week to make your bar better? And another thing that hasn't changed over the course and won't be changing anytime soon, and I think you guys have all realized about this with me, I'm not much for BS. I don't like fluff. I like to get into the data, get in the details, and get out. My time is valuable. Your time is valuable. We don't want to waste any time talking on a podcast that we don't need to. Now, with all that said, kind of about how the podcast developed, I want to take some time to specifically talk about some of the great guests that we've had on in these last 200 episodes. And I'm going to highlight a few specifically, but every guest we've had on has been amazing. I have learned so much from these folks. And so let me highlight a few and then we'll talk about some of the lessons we've learned from them over the last 200 episodes. So one of the recent episodes that I was really good, that really gave us a lot of information, was with Joseph Ehrman. He is great. If you haven't listened to that episode, that was episode, I think it was 183. He owns Elixir in San Francisco. It's the second oldest bar in San Francisco. He is one of the pioneers of the craft cocktail movement. And he now has a refrigerated mixer line, Fresh Victor, all of which was great. And just having him come on, share his insight, share his knowledge. This guy's has owned a bar almost longer than I've been in the industry, even though I didn't come from the industry. But if you need some great insights on longevity running a bar and some real good tips and tricks, go listen to that episode. He has great insights. Another episode that I personally really enjoyed, and some of these I enjoy because I'm a data nerd, right? But we had Jeffrey Tafetti on. That was episode 179. He's with Frontline Performance Group. And we talked about his data analytics for hotels, and then what they're finding when they really break down data in some really hidden places to look. For example, they found that when they looked at discounts by server, oftentimes a few servers were discounting a lot more than the rest of the group. One of the things he said that stuck with me is that top performers generate 30 to 35% more revenue per guest than bottom performers. And I don't even know how many of us can see guest check average by employee or even look at it. But that's something to keep in mind. Your top performers are going to make you a lot more money than your lower performers. And it's obvious when you say it that way. But at the same time, what does that mean in dollars and cents? How can we use that to dictate our schedule? Jeffrey did a fantastic job of breaking that down for us. Another episode, now this is going back to 2024, was episode 88 with Mike Jameson. Just a killer episode where we talk through what bars screw up on taxes, what tax forms you need to know, and how you can prevent resolution issues that are going to cost you 20 or 30 grand. So he knows how to build systems at scale, and that is a fantastic episode to listen to just to understand the tax position for those of you in the US. Another episode that comes to mind was Casey Anton. And she wrote the book Profit First for Restaurants. Obviously, bars and restaurants, pretty much the same. But her insights on Profit First are phenomenal. And I think I said in that episode, I'm not a huge fan of Profit First. I'm still not. But guess what? It's a great system that works for some people, and she broke it down in a way that I never would be able to because, frankly, it's not my thing. But if you're interested in looking at different ways to manage your cash and business, go listen to that episode with Casey. It's phenomenal. And then we've had a couple people that we've had on a lot more regularly. People like Dave Nitzel. Dave's great. We have that Party of Six panel podcast that runs on this same channel, if you will. And he's a key person there. Also had him a few times to come on and talk about Hospitality DNA, talk about his management program and some different things. Definitely get his books. If there was one author, I was going to say you should read their books in hospitality Well, if there was one author, I'd say Chris Schneider, go buy the book. How to Make Top Shelf Profits in the Bar Business. It's on Amazon. It's a killer book. But if I'm not just self-promoting, the person whose books I would read, Dave, his co-author, Dave Domzalski, they write great stuff. So go check that out. The first episode I did with him was number 63, but like I said, he's been on a number of times, so look it up. Another person that has been a great friend of the show over the years and over episodes is Jordan Silverman. He was with Starfish. Starfish is now Spot On Profit Assist. It's a great program if you use Spot On to understand your expenses and kind of ties in the POS side with your accounting side. Then there are countless other people, whether it's Sean Finter, Chris Tunstall, Jason Luttrell, Greg Buda, Emily LaRufa, Ross Chinowski, Taylor Wesson, Greg Singer, Kelvin Abrams. And there's a ton of people I forgot. But all of those folks, I cannot say how grateful I am that they have come in, shared their insights with me and with you, and really helped us to get a diversity of perspectives and to dive deep and better understand the industry. Another person who I must mention would be Bruce Nelson. He was on recently. Another killer conversation about the bookkeeping finance side. A little nerdy. He and I see things a lot of the same way. And he had some great, though, fantastic ways of looking at things that I had never looked at before. So thank you again to all the guests that have been on. I hope you folks as listeners have very much enjoyed hearing from those guests and what they have had to say. Now, as always, we can't get through an episode without talking framework. So I want to talk about the kind of top 10 frameworks or 10 episodes that I would shoot you back to for refining your methods and really dialing in on what it is you should be doing. And these are the episodes where, quite frankly, if you don't listen to anything else, listen to these 10 and try to put in place the concepts they're talking about. So the first thing I would point out is the MCC framework, mindset, concept, culture. That's pretty much how everything I do goes back to one of those three buckets. Mindset being your potential to lead, your own brain as an owner. Concept, what is your structured path to profits? You build out your menu, your operations, all of that tie in there. Culture, how do you build a community around your team and guests? So your team management, your marketing, your values, your identity, your systems, all kind of play in there. And that framework is the lens for pretty much every strategic discussion that we have on this podcast. So if you're not familiar with it, we've referenced it in a lot of later episodes as a diagnostic tool for kind of business problems and how to view things. But episodes 2 through 4 are all about mindset, concept, culture. You could also check out episode 76 and 84. They kind of build on that basis. Another episode that I really want you to check out, Essential KPIs every bar owner must master. That is episode 87. And it goes through all the KPIs you need. And if you measure those KPIs that we talk about in that episode, it gives you not just a baseline, but it gives you an understanding of your business that you can use to grow it. And it covers really essentially, if you're not going to measure any other KPIs, these are the ones that you need to measure. And it goes through them in quite a bit of detail. One of my favorite things when it comes to training is tell, show, do, review. Tell your employees what you want them to do. Show them how to do it. Let them do it, then review what you covered. That whole process, and this is something that we've talked about a lot, but that whole process is covered in episode 94 if you want to go back and give that a lesson. Menu pricing, menu engineering, we've talked about that a lot. But menu engineering is something that if you're not utilizing it, I highly suggest you research it, you dig into it, you learn what you can about it. And when it comes to menu engineering, if you need help, let me know. I like my numbers. I love menu engineering. But you can look at episodes 28, 104, and 146, and those really do a good job of breaking down the menu engineering process. Episode 108 and 112, we talked about food and beverage cost control basics. So that's when we really got into a bunch of stuff about theoretical and actual. We talked about that a little bit on Monday too. And then 108, episode 108 was all about beverage cost fundamentals. Episode 112 was labor cost secrets. And between those two episodes, those are really foundational episodes for getting a good feel on ways to control your prime cost. One of my favorite things that we've talked about, and this is something that so few people do, but I really encourage you to do this, is to put in place a daily cash flow tracker. And we covered that in episode 152. But in general, in this industry, too many people think, am I profitable? Which, okay, yeah, we all want to be profitable. We all want to be very profitable. That's the whole reason I do what I do. And that's probably the whole reason you listen to this podcast. But am I profitable on paper is way different from do I have cash? Do I have cash is what's going to determine how long your business can actually operate. And that, again, is all covered in the 3-step daily cash flow tracker in episode 152. In episode 141, we talked about strategic price increases and the psychology behind how to increase prices, how to use value communication strategies to justify premium pricing. And right now, inflation has slowed down a lot, but we have a lot of other factors that are raising prices in our businesses. And quite frankly, I don't know many bars and restaurants that have fully increased prices from all the inflation that we saw post COVID combined with the tariff inflation. So that is a great episode to go back to if you're looking at raising prices this year, which most people need to do. Because again, inflation hasn't, it's slowed down. From a purely academic perspective, one might even say it stopped increasing at a rate that scares us, and it appears that inflation will be decreasing in the near term, whatever you want to say. But the bottom line is probably if we look at your cost, your not your actual cost percentages, but your theoretical cost percentages, they're still higher than they were in 2019. So you probably need to raise your prices a little bit. So go review that episode. That's a great way, particularly when we get into some of those psychological tricks on price increases, to put some more money on the bottom line and not have your guests rebel crazily against you. Episode number 168. And this is going back to cash flow, but we talked about a daily cash flow tracker. 168 was all about cash flow velocity, the speed money moves in and out of your business. Again, you have profit, great, but unless you have cash, you don't have a business. So, cash flow velocity is a great way to understand how your cash is behaving. Go look it up. And the last framework I'm going to point out to you today is the complete business planning system. Now, this is kind of episode 190, 192, 198. This was December of last year. We kind of talked through a bunch of pieces of this. 190 is going to cover 5 baseline metrics, 3 plus a 3-goal framework. 92 is a marketing calendar with anchor, rhythm, and tactical promotions. And 198 is a leadership development system to identify, train, delegate, and measure people and bring your bartenders up to manager quality employees. So take a look at those 3. If you combine the strategy in those 3 and use that as your 2026 planning trilogy, if you will, you're going to see great results in this next year. So if you have not listened to those, or if you listened to those, it was the holidays, you were busy, didn't really sink in, I really would encourage you to go back and listen to those and to think about implementing those in your business in the upcoming month. But I really hope for all of you that have been listening, especially those of you that have been listening since the early days, that you have been able to go from, I don't know my numbers, I don't know what frameworks I need, to I run a data-driven, synchronized or systematized, profitable bar. If you've had that journey, great. Leave a comment. Let us know. I'd love to hear those stories from you. Go over to Bar Business Nation. Let us know those stories. If you haven't had that experience, reach out. I'm more than happy to talk to anybody and see if I can help you actually run that data-driven, systematized, profitable bar that you want. Now, I want to take a second because over the course of the past 2-3 years, not only has this podcast evolved, not only hopefully have your systems evolved, but also the industry's evolved. So there are some things that I would say are quite a bit different today than they were before. So one of the big changes has been technology integration. Before when we started this, we were still basically doing basic POS. There was some inventory systems, MarketMan, Margin Edge, ClearCogs, things of that nature that you could get, but most of us were still doing it on paper. Today, we see integrated POS systems that work with AI accounting, things like Starfish or business analytics, accounting, demand forecasting, like I'm doing with QuickSpec. If you're interested in demand forecasting or getting better business analytics, drop a comment, shoot me a message. I'd be happy to talk to you about that as well. And for all of you listening, it's kind of a 200 episode special. If you shoot me a message, say, hey, I listened to the 200th episode. I want to figure out how to use AI to improve the financials in my bar. I can probably get you into QuickSpec at a very, very good price, if not free. I don't really want to say free on a podcast, but if you're interested, let me know. We'll talk through what we can do and see where we can end up. But technology is a huge difference. And what we're about to see is a gap between the tech savvy operators and the traditional operators. That gap has traditionally been very small. It's widened a little bit. I think we're going to see it widen huge because there's a big difference between someone that knows all their data by pulling up a program and someone that has to sit there and figure their data and maybe makes mistakes and then realizes that takes forever and doesn't even do their data. So I really encourage you guys look at what technology you can adopt because that'll improve your efficiency and help you make better decisions because you'll have better data, easier data to use to make those decisions. Another big change we've seen over the last 3 years or so is this sober curious thing, right? Zero proof. I thought a couple years ago this could be a flash in a pan. It could just be a Gen Z decided they didn't want to drink stupid thing. Clearly, that's not the truth. This is a permanent market shift, and it's one that we are going to have to come to reality with. One thing I can tell you from the data that I've been able to look at the last few years is that bars with a permanent, robust, good non alcoholic program, they see higher returns than bars that don't have them. They capture customers they would have otherwise lost entirely. Now, online and in different places, I've really noticed, and I think maybe it's this month because it's dry January, which a bunch of people are doing, that people are complaining about the cost of mocktails being the same as cocktails. That has to come from our end as an education piece because I think we all know that mocktails frequently cost the same, if not more than cocktails. Either A, because we're using a bunch of different juices and juice is more expensive than well booze by a long shot, or we're using zero proof booze that is actually priced more like a premium than it is a well liqueur. So we need to do some customer education there so that we can keep charging the same. But please, 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 do not give in to what all these folks are saying when they're saying mocktails should be cheaper than cocktails. Cost is cost, price is price. We may need to work on some education here, but a lot of our guests assume that juice is cheap when juice is freaking expensive, and they know that when they go to the grocery store. Just point that out to them. But do it nicely, right? But this sober curious thing, it's here to stay. If you're not on board yet, you've got to get on board with this trend. Another change we've seen over the past few years is the labor market's changed, right? We were coming out of COVID a few years ago. Everything was kind of wishy-washy. Now we've seen that, quite frankly, we're not going to get back to where we were in 2019. There was still hope when this podcast started in early 2023, a couple years ago, that we could get there. We could get back to 2019. We ain't. Not going to happen. So to really win in today's labor market, you need to invest in culture, training, and advancement paths. If you're not giving your employees competitive pay, benefits, career development, if you don't have a positive culture and you're not training them well, guess what? They're going to go somewhere else. And it's not like necessarily they're going to go to a bar down the street. They may switch industries entirely, which is what we've seen with a whole huge amount of people with a lot of experience in this industry. They just left the industry and moved to something else. And now they work a 9 to 5 and have benefits and they like it. So we're not going to get them back. So we have to become more competitive as employers moving forward. Otherwise, you're going to have issues. And what's really funny is that there are people that have very, very little turnover. Like 10%. There are people that have 300%. A lot of times the pay isn't that different. A lot of times the benefits aren't that different. Almost 100% of the time, what's different between low turnover and high turnover? Honesty and accountability from the ownership. But more importantly, training, development, and just not being an asshole. Right? Be competitive, train your employees well. Don't be an asshole. But this employee management issue, I don't see this getting better in the next couple of years. And it's definitely a change compared to where we were pre-COVID. Another change that's happened post-COVID, and this goes back to what I was talking about before with inflation from COVID and all of that, plus now inflation from tariffs. Financial margins are tighter. You don't have the ability that you had in the 90s. I don't know how many of you remember the 90s, but you don't have the ability that people had in the 90s, early 2000s of just, oh yeah, if I don't worry about labor, I'm fine because I make enough money. We're not there. Operational excellence has gone from being something optional to something that's mandatory. Every dollar you waste matters more today than it ever has. So you need to get tight on those controls, and you need to make sure that you are set up for success and that you can manage those numbers. And the last trend that I've seen, and I will jokingly tell people, yeah, it's probably because I've talked about it for the last 2 years, but it hasn't just been me. A lot of other folks have talked about this as well. It's data-driven decision making. It's because we have those tighter margins. It's because we have the labor issues that we have. It's because of all these other changes that we've talked about. The data-driven decision making has now become a thing in this industry. And operators that have a good handle on their financial data, that have good ways to visualize it and have dashboards, they tend to do better than operators that don't. Monthly POS analysis and KPI tracking is largely what's going to separate winners from losers. That's why I've been talking about this for so long, because I know that's what we all need. But if you still don't have the ability to visualize your data, reach out. Let's talk. I have ways to do that. But make sure that you're doing that moving forward, because that is going to be key to being able to make the right decision quickly, right? When we get our data right, not only are data-driven decisions better decisions, oftentimes if that data is all put together properly, they're faster, smarter, better in every way. So before I let you go today, just want to look forward a little bit to what's coming over the next year. Goal for 2026 is that we do another 100 episodes. We did 100 episodes last year, going to try to do 100 plus this year as well. We're still going to talk about strategic planning, financial optimization, marketing and customer growth, scaling and sustainability, and leadership and culture. All of those things that we've been talking about, we're going to continue to talk about. Now, we're going to do that both through solo episodes like we've always done, where I just come on here and talk about things. We're also going to have more industry leaders, more multi-unit operators, more technology providers, more financial people, more consultants and coaches to really make sure that we're bringing in those outside voices. Another thing to look forward to, and I'm not sure, probably next month we're looking at this. We're going to be doing a 8-part series on integrating technology into your bar, integrating AI into your bar. And that should be really cool, because we're going to talk some obviously about QuickSpec, because that's what I do. I do AI for bars now. But we're also going to talk about just in general how you can utilize it and try to give you those tools to really leverage this tech to help yourself in the next year and moving forward. One other thing that we're going to try at some point here, and this will be through Bar Business Nation, is doing quarterly-ish live Q&A sessions. So look for the first one of those probably popping up March. But every couple months, every 2-3 months, I'm going to try to do a live session with everybody. And you can come on, ask your questions, and then we'll have that also posted in that group so that anybody can come and look at it. And you guys can all learn from each other. Because again, I know you guys listen to this podcast to hear me talk largely. That's what this is. But you all have so much knowledge you can share with each other. Bar Business Nation has been one of the just amazing things that has come out of this podcast. And so if you're not a member there, get on Facebook, look up Bar Business Nation. You got to answer 3 questions to get in. Make sure you put something in those blanks. If you don't, it will automatically reject you, just so that you're aware. But just fill out the form. It gets you in. It stops all the bots and everything. But if you're not a member there, go join. Ask questions. Because when we all work together, we are all so much smarter. Now, my commitment to you in the next year is that we're going to have continuing high quality content. I'm going to keep working to improve. Hopefully, you realize that this episode is a lot more polished and better than episode 1, which looking back on it was pretty bad, but you grow over time. We're going to keep focusing on topics that are relevant to you, that are timely, that help you drive your business forward with actionable insights and real frameworks to make your life better. You know, at the end of the day, we always talk about this as being about putting more profit on the bottom line. And it is about putting more profit on the bottom line. But more profit on the bottom line means more vacations with your family. The ability to hire a manager so you can go to your kids' baseball games. It means a lot more than just money. It means quality of life. And that's what this is all about. That's what I want to make sure that I am always committed to, is helping you improve your quality of life. Our financial focus is going to remain core to everything, right? I am a finance guy. We talk about finances. And again, I said this at the very beginning, and absolutely we're going to continue with this idea that we're not going to give you BS. We're not going to give you fluff, but business education that works. I should say this episode is kind of fluffy, but hopefully it's reminiscing. And it's, again, thanking all the guests and all of you for listening for this fantastic milestone of actually getting to 200 episodes. Now, I've heard from many of you that you've implemented things that we've done, or that you've tried some of these frameworks, some of these data points, some of these activities we've talked about over the years, and they've worked and they've helped you. If things have helped you, go below, comment, let me know. Always feel free to reach out. I love hearing from you guys, and how what we've talked about has helped you succeed, how what we have talked about has helped you make your business better. Because that's honestly, that's what drives. What drives me is helping you have a better life. So to all the listeners, you're why this exists. What you guys have questions about, what will help you is what's driving it. To all the guests that we've had on this podcast, thank you so much for sharing your knowledge. To everyone who's been a client of mine, your challenges have become teaching moments that we've been able to leverage for everyone. And of course, thank you for your business, but thank you for the ability and the opportunity to help you be more successful. To the Bar Business Nation community, thank you for supporting each other and for helping to amplify what we talk about here. We're going to keep this going. I really hope everyone has enjoyed this. Comment below again. Feel free to reach out. Tell us what you like, what you don't like, so that we can keep making this podcast better for you, our listeners. But again, just thank you so much for letting us get to 200 episodes. And I want you guys to remember, bar business is a real business. We're going to keep marching forward, giving you what you need to be successful, make good decisions, and to improve your quality of life. That about wraps it up for today. If you enjoyed today's insights, make sure you like, subscribe, and leave a review. If you are ready to take your bar to the next level, schedule a strategy session with me by clicking the link in the show notes below. Until next time, have a great day, and we will talk again later.